Well, my friends, first of all, it's a very pleasure moment because we have Traci Alford, CEO of Effie Awards, global CEO, which is amazing to have her joining this podcast that we have. And first of all, thank you so much, Tracy, for accepting to be part of this. And it's a huge pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Rafa. Very, very excited to talk to you.
And I will talk about the Effie Alliance Foundation, and because I'm very happy with that and keen to understand better the Effie purpose and positive impact on not only the effectiveness of marketing but also on society and the planet. But let's start with your career because I've seen that you have lived in different places around the globe, and
Yep.
and I've lived, as I've mentioned, in London for near 5 years. But I really admire you having lived on different places, and I would love to understand more about the understanding of the culture, different cultures that you have lived. But could you tell us a bit of your career first?
Sure. So, I've always, I think there's a couple of drivers behind my career. One is I do love people. So I think, when you live around the world, move around the world, you get to understand not just yourself even better, but the cultures in which you live. So I think it's exciting. I think it's highly interesting. And I think particularly if you want to do a global role of any kind, it's incredibly valuable. So for me, that was one of my drivers. Is I trained technically as a marketeer, and that's where I started my career, Cadbury Schweppes in Melbourne, Australia. But it was always my intent to go abroad and stretch myself in that way. So while before actually going to university, I lived in Japan for a period of time, which I enjoyed. And then my first point in my career, my first move after working on the beverage side, so working on Schweppes, was I went to work at Dr. Pepper 7 Up in Dallas, Texas, which was fantastic. But at that point, I did sales. So it was kind of like classic marketing, sales, and I also worked on Walmart, which was also at the time growing and fantastic, still, one of the biggest retailers in the world. Then I wanted to work on the confectionery side. So I moved back. I spent time in Singapore at that point in time. And then my boss moved back to Europe and do some strategy. So I moved to Paris. I went into the strategy team. I also did some finance roles as well at that point in time. And then ultimately, I moved to London where I stayed for 10 years. And I absolutely loved my time at Cadbury Schweppes. It was amazing. The people are amazing. The brands are amazing. Um, and then we were acquired by Kraft Heinz. And at that point in my life, I did not want to move to Chicago. So I moved on to do some. I wanted to do something that was still in my sphere, but challenging. So I chose to go to the B2B sector and moved to Shell. The energy sector is incredibly, incredibly interesting. It's big. It impacts our lives in so many ways. So I went in to do that, which was fabulous. And I had all my roles while I was at Shell were also global roles, from strategy to retailing to product development. And then when I moved to Singapore, I also focused on upstream, downstream, and midstream, working on communications and crisis management, which you can imagine in an energy business, we were busy. So, so that was that phase. And then we moved to New York. I took 6 months to settle the family into New York, new home, new country, all that sort of thing. And then I decided I wanted to continue to do something global. Um, and I also wanted to be a CEO. So at that point in time, the Effie's opportunity came my way. Um, and that's what I've been working on ever since. And I love it because it still allows me to connect with all fantastic people I know from around the world, but it's also something I'm incredibly passionate about. I'm very passionate that marketeers just don't, get out of bed to do great stuff, which they do. They get out of bed to do great stuff that has an impact. And that could be impact by definition, as in changing behavior from a nonprofit perspective, or it can be changing behavior for a for-profit, which is normally linked to sales and ROI. So that's been my journey, and I feel very, very, very grateful for it. And it's been a lot of fun.
It's a fantastic journey, and I would love to have visited at least all those countries that you have, and you have worked on a leading role in different companies, right? On Shell and things around, and now CEO, but you were vice president on different managing director on different of those places that you have mentioned, and that's fantastic. And now you are looking and helping the whole effectiveness of this country in terms of marketing, and of course
Yes.
advertising because of that on the terms of that. And I would love to learn from you a little bit more about Effie Awards. I have been a judge on Effie Awards previously here in Latin America, but I would love to learn more about, first of all, the purpose, from your point of view, the purpose of Effie Awards. Which one is the purpose of Effie?
So I think the first thing is there's Effie, and our mission is to lead, inspire, and champion the practice and the practitioners of marketing effectiveness. And we have actually three product groups under that. Awards is one. The second one is our case library or insights, where we create content and we have tens of thousands of cases. And then the third one is the Effie Academy, where we train people to be more effective. So that's kind of our portfolio. But if I was to focus on the award side of things, I think the first thing is to point out is that our awards around the world are run identically. So we are in 60 countries, but we touch 125 because we have regional awards in every region. So MENA, Europe, Asia Pacific, and LATAM. So we reach a lot of people. We pretty much are doing awards judging at some point in time across the world. We probably engage, give or take, 15,000 senior judges around the world. And when we talk about it, we talk about marketeers, and that's just not client side, it's agency side, it's creatives, it's strategy people, it's tech people, it's media people. We define it in the full ecosystem, because I think it's really, really important to understand that effectiveness runs across everything we do in the full marketing mix. It's not just one narrow view thing. So I think, it's consistency. It's around the world. We engage our communities. And I think the other thing worth pointing out, which is what we do across our full portfolio, is our framework. So the Effie framework has 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is understanding your business context and being crystal clear on your objectives, both business objectives and linking into the marketing objectives. Pillar number 2, which is really the strategy side of things, which is mining an insight and coming up with your big strategic idea. Number 3 is the executions. That's really what I would call a creative pillar. And number 4 is the results. And it's very, very, it's a cycle of which you could have, you got to have continual learning. I think it's really, really important. Just to give you some statistics around the Effie Awards, 96% of Effie winners report some type of ROI. 70%, the awards are essential in validating their marketing impact. So it plays a really important role. I mean, the way I like to think about our framework, it is basically a business case. So if you can write that, that's why the other products in our portfolio are also very key. So it's lovely and fantastic and essential that we celebrate great work that works, absolutely. But I think it's also really important we know how to make work effective. It's crucial. And so I think that's why we train people. That's why we continue to engage. Because also about 50% see winning an Effie as a new business opportunity. They use it. Like, we're going to create work that's going to be beneficial for you and ultimately drive your business. And, getting, as I said, from a strategy perspective, the insights piece is absolutely crucial. It's not an easy one. It's often very, very difficult to mine an insight, very difficult to mine a global insight. And I would say out of all the winners, 82% of those winners, the insights has been applied to the client's project to enhance their growth. So I think, the awards sits as the foundation, but there's lots of opportunities outside of that.
And it's great that you've mentioned the four pillars. And the first one, for sure, is the definition of the problem, right? Sometimes for us, the agency, sometimes the client doesn't define specifically the problem. So our role is not only take the brief and move forward without defining specifically the problem that we are trying to solve and the opportunities and things around that, right?
But I also think it's an opportunity. And I think it's really important to know clients inside their business have a lot of things to do.
For sure.
And so I think particularly coming from my background, I think agencies have an amazing opportunity to add value. So if a client hasn't had that opportunity to think about the business context, then the agency has the opportunity to help them. Or they do it together. And by doing it together, you build a relationship, you understand more what the client needs, you refine the challenge really crisply. And I think there's just so much benefit in that engagement. And I would encourage anyone who's agency side, if you see things are missing, I mean, as I said, the clients spend a lot of their time executing. They spend a lot of time stakeholder managing a lot of people. So I think, I think there's a lot of value. I suppose what I'm saying is don't be afraid to say, I think this is missing. Let's either work on this together, or I can help you give you a first go or something like that. So I think that's a really important part of building a very solid and strategic relationship.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Collaborating, not only, oh, here's the right thing. It's not about that.
Yeah, and it's not a chain of events. I mean, we find this with effectiveness as well, is that whether we like it or not, what we do is a little messy. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't follow process, but it's a building process and it's not linear and it's not a straight line. But it's something we should be thinking about every day. So it's kind of like, I mean, effectively, agencies are an extension of the client. I mean, and they should feel and be part of the team. And that trust piece is really very important. And that's when you build great work. That's when it all comes together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking about now the Lions together with Effie, because you have announced, at least I believe it was in January, that you are together with Lions, and after that the Lions Effie Lions Foundation. So I'd love to learn from you what are the main things that they have changed, and for a better, of course, way for both of you and now together, the Cannes Lions and Effie.
So, not everyone is aware of this, but Effie Worldwide, as we were previously, was a nonprofit.
Wow.
So we felt there was an opportunity to continue to grow and continue to do all the fantastic things that Effie does, but with a partner. And I think what is really great about this partnership is that if you think about it, Cannes Lions comes from a top down. It's global. It's one event per year. Effie's is all over the world. We are running events all the time. We've got judging all the time. We've got galas all the time. We can have seminars all the time. So it's a really lovely combination. I mean, if you think about Lions, number one brand in creativity, Effie, number one brand in effectiveness. I mean, it's a great coming together. And I think, between them, there's just so much opportunity to understand even better, particularly with the Effie data, about how creativity works with effectiveness. And I think I think that's really very, very, very exciting. But having moved all our assets into that partnership, what I was also clear to do was how can we preserve a nonprofit element that does something for good? And where we landed was we would have an Effie Lions Foundation with a focus primarily on students. So it would be all about the next generation. So we can continue to do what we do, which is primarily with professionals. And then, the Effie Lions Foundation can do, so one product remained, which was collegiate, which is an undergraduate program, which is in the United States, but we do have it in parts of Latin America as well, which is where they get a case study, they then have to come back and present as they would, and then the client chooses two of them to come and present. So I think it's really exciting. It's a live problem or challenge that needs to be resolved, and the students have an opportunity, to do it in front of the real client. So it's fantastic, and it's loved. It's a well-loved competition. So in addition to that, the foundation will also focus, as we talked about briefly beforehand, on diversity, on sustainability. But what I think we need to be careful to do is, which was something as a nonprofit we didn't have a lot of time for, is if you put too many things on a foundation's plate too quickly, you don't get the focus and you don't get the solid foundation. So I think, future talent is number one, making sure the future talent represents the customer base, which is diverse because it's everybody.
Yeah.
And so by default, you start to build that and you move that forward. And I'm really, really very passionate about it. I'm a board member. I'm super, super excited about, what the foundation can truly do for the industry.
And it's amazing to know that about the foundation. That's fantastic. And I was just thinking now about the career that those young people that are studying with the foundation want to follow. They don't want to work on marketing on the client side, or they want to go to the agencies on the strategy, or they want to go to media agencies. Do you have something like that so you can understand what they're looking for?
So at the minute, it's new. It's brand new. So it's only been going since February. So it is still very, very new. The collegiate program has run for 13 years. So that's definitely in place. And big program in the United States, as I said, we have them also in Latin America. That product exists, but now part of what we have to do is sit back and say, okay, what can we do for the next generation? How can we build it? What's relevant? How can we, really engage? And if you're a professional, there are loads of things. So at Effie's, we have Fundamentals, which is an online, it is only in English at the minute. I think potentially we're looking at putting it in other languages, but it's currently only in English. But it uses our cases, it runs through our framework. It's modular, so you don't need to do it all in the one go. And then we do, as I said, all our other training projects around the world. If you've already graduated, all of those are available. We do a boot camp in New York, where that's a 4-day experience. People fly in. We're very selective about the people in the room to make sure that people in the room represent the ecosystem. This year, it's happening in October. There'll be around 30 people in the room, and it's a fantastic opportunity to meet your peers, talk, but also be trained. And you get to hear the most amazing speakers because we've had the opportunity to work with so many different people. We've had some fantastic people win awards, as you would imagine. They then come back and give their time and talk to those individuals. So so there's lots of great stuff in Effie's in terms of, part of the Cannes Lions, as well as the foundation, which people can maximize.
I would love to see those presentations, those speeches, honestly.
Sure.
I'd love to. Eventually, someday I will. And over here, I haven't mentioned that before, but I'm now a teacher in a university on a short course and at my Med school as well, that are about diverse tech and inclusion in advertising, basically. Something that I was focused on during my years at Meta, training the creative agencies on that. And I know I'm aware and very happy that now we have awards at Effie considering those categories, not only for nonprofit, but for the positive social impact. And I would love to learn a little bit more about that. How's it going and what is the idea of having those? And how's the applications for that? Are we having more applications on that? And are the agencies and the clients being more effective on doing that from your
Yeah.
point of view?
So positive change has been around for 10 years.
Wow,
So,
wow.
and we break it into two big groups, and then it's broken down further. But one is around social change, and the other one's around the environment. So they're the sort of how we separate that. Then underneath that, what takes place is that we have a category for nonprofits and a category for profits in both of those buckets. Because as you can imagine, generally, not always the case, but for-profit businesses generally have more money that they can invest in these sorts of things. So make it equitable and fair. That is how it runs. And look, there's just some fantastic things using amazing technology, from like, apps and voice recognition to understand things like trafficking of children, to quitting smoking, to something that's particularly problematic here in the United States, which is guns, gun lobbying, plastics in the ocean. We have had water usage. We have had a really interesting one from AB InBev around farms and managing farms environmentally and linking that through to their crops, which links through to their final product. So it is incredibly diverse, which is fabulous. And I think the point here is that making money and building a brand do not need to be mutually exclusive from a purpose perspective. You can do both. You can absolutely do both. And different organizations do it in different ways. Like Patagonia would be one around their recycling, their sustainability. And it's a very profitable business. So I think, and I can list a load of organic brands around food, et cetera, et cetera. So I think to answer your question around it's been there for a long time. It will continue to be there. What I think's very interesting is the diversity of participants in both the social and also the environmental category. And I think, as I said, you can do good and do good business at the same time.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the triple bottom line, the people, planet, and profit. Of course, we are not going to forget the profit, but what if we think about the people and planet as well at each brief and seeing what's possible to do on each brief?
I think, people sometimes forget this. If you're not profitable, you can't influence anyone. If you're not
Perfect.
profitable, you don't have a business, you don't have an organization. So therefore, it's one thing to be very altruistic. It's another thing to be able to balance both of them, but it's very, very doable. It's absolutely doable.
And from 6, 7 years ago, the presentations I was doing when I was at Meta, they were saying that less than 1% of the ads around the globe, over 40,000 ads evaluated, had people with physical issues. So they don't
Disability. Yeah.
disability, thank you. So less than 1%, and LGBTQE plus less than 1% as well. And 73, if I'm not wrong, or 83% of Black people didn't feel represented when there was a Black person on the ad. So this is the things that we have still, I believe, but I don't have the updated data. But the things that you are doing for over 10 years helps to create the culture of the agencies and the marketeers to think about that, about the inclusion, the diversity in advertising, and the equity as well. But also this positive impact that you have mentioned that is possible to do. And Patagonia for me is the biggest example of that, because it was not only on the talk, was of course on the doing as well, on the producing the clothes. That's fantastic. And also from Brazil, well, from Latin, because I have other people from Latin. I have worked for Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Peru, and Mexico. But sitting here in Brazil, working for those as well, it was amazing. But for Latin, how do you feel the culture of advertising or marketing is different from the other places? Is there a difference from over here, or are they all the same? But is there something different when you see, especially from Brazil, but when you see the ads, the campaigns from Brazil and from the other places that you usually see?
So I think over time, I've seen an evolution in terms of, I think the Brazilians and Latam, but if we're going to talk specifically about Brazil, has always been rooted in fantastic creativity. I think that lays at the heart of the Brazilian people. By nature, you're very colorful. Um, you know, it's a very bubbly, it's a very engaging culture. Um, and so I think that has always been the case. But what I think is fantastic is probably over the last, I'd say 5 years, maybe even less than that, 4 or 5 years, is that I think the Brazilian culture has really started to engage more in effectiveness. And I think the impact on that is it's good for business. And it's good for business. It's good for everyone in, in the environment, from not just the consumers, but the businesses making money and investing back in the community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, and that I think is shown in also, you've got some fantastic people from Latin America who have very, very senior roles in global businesses as well. So I think, and I can tell you from what I've seen in the growth of the Effie Awards in Brazil in particular, it's been significant. It's really significant. I mean, even our following list is something like 60,000. That's big. It's a big number. So definitely always been rooted in creativity, but I think you're now bringing it to life in the best way possible, and being effective as well, which I think is fabulous.
That's fabulous. Should look not only for creativity without, of course, thinking about the effectiveness that one will have, and for that, looking for the benchmarks not only on the creative perspective, but also on that. How can we capture the insight on that based on this category, on this industry, even from places around the globe, from the same category or other categories. I've seen that you have another category as well, which is based on AI. So the artificial intelligence one is about the companies of AI, or is it about how to use AI, if it was good or not? So is the companies like ChatGPT competing with the other ones, or in terms of the award, who have made the better?
We have a lot different interactions with AI. So the very first point is any FE paper, if AI has been involved, you have to let us know. Full stop.
Okay.
That we know immediately. That's a generic question across everything. Has it been written by AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's point number one. Point number two, we do have an AI category, and that's really directed towards how has AI been used to enhance the result. And it could be anything. It could be anything from, so there was one here in the US recently, it was the New York lottery, which is big and famous. They were concerned about, encouraging the next generation. The next generation were concerned that they weren't going to win. There was this theory that it's so big, you don't win, so people weren't entering. So what they went and did is they did the survey, and it was all words around, if you won, what would you do with the money? And they just fed it into an AI system and created visuals on the spot all over the city. There was another fantastic one in a B2B environment, like creating, this was in Vegas, a very big dome. You could walk past it, engage with it. So it's more about how is AI being used to enhance what you want to do to get a result, more than AI. Of course, AI companies are involved in that, but it's more about how it's being used for a benefit.
Yeah, I completely understand. That you can need to tell because AI is part of our lives today, right? Some use it more.
Not going to go away. So I think, it's here. And I think we need to think about it as a positive tool. That's how we need to think about it. It's not, it's a tool and you maximize it.
And to learn how to make the prompt and just thinking that is not the first answer that gives you yeah, the answer that you need. It's about the conversation. How do you give?
You know, and yeah, it's a continual learning machine. So if you accept something that you don't want, then that's not good. You need to give it feedback, 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 feedback. And over time, it will get better. But yeah, the feedback.
So Tracy, what
Yeah.
advices would you give for the creative strategists and the creative agencies? Could you let us know, please?
I think strategy people are more critical than ever. And the reason why I think that is they bridge the gap between data, creativity, and culture. And that's a really, really important thing to do. And insights, it's outrageously hard to get an insight. I'm not talking about facts, I'm talking about a real insight. To shape business outcomes, brand purpose, which we've spoken about, and align with all the cultural trends and you know the volume of change that we're experiencing at the minute everywhere in the world. It's a really it's a complex customer journey. You've got complex media landscapes, you've got tech, you've got fragmentation, and like to weave all of that together, it's difficult. And I think that's why strategists are so important, and they help navigate, but they help lead with clarity. And the other thing which I think is vital for a strategy person is they have the opportunity to not be in the business of the client.
Always an opportunity.
It's an opportunity because, when you're doing day to day and all you can think about, as we talked about, beverages or confectionery, sometimes you just need some stimulation which is outside of your category. And like, I think, if I look at our case library, for example, if you wanted to go and launch something in Brazil, I'd be looking at adjacent categories or categories that have similar drivers. And by that, you can start to, mold all of that together. Now, when you're a client, you don't have time for that. Strategy people, it's kind of part of their job. So I think, strategists today, as I said, I think it's a fantastic job. I think it's really interesting. It's not easy. So, and I think finding an insight has never been easy, quite frankly. But I think it's a really crucial role to understand drivers of the category and of a brand to deliver business results.
This on the inside, I remembered of Julian Coe, a very big expert on strategy, and he's a trainer and speaks a lot about that. And in terms of the insight, he has mentioned the four C's: insight on the customer, consumer, on category, on the company, and the culture. So he thinks about grabbing those insights, and after that, you find a bigger insight for that journey, creative journeys. Like this is the main insight, and after that, the key message and things around that. Do you think that makes sense in terms of being effective, or?
Definitely, definitely. I think, the thing about an insight is that ultimately it's a human truth, and that's never changed. But what has changed is how you get it. because all the things that you've just said have become more complex. The customers, the consumers, the culture, it's changing, incredibly quickly. We're much more connected, as a world than we ever have before. Accessibility, it's just the customer journey, as I mentioned before, like it's just, there's a lot of, changes, but at the real strategic high level, it remains the same. You need a human truth that inspires people, but you need to collect it, probably the data behind it, in a very different way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to understand from the human truth and grabbing the main insight from that, and after that the opportunity, right? The key message comes after understand the opportunity. And the culture one, I believe it helps a lot to think about the positive social and environmental impact, because when you understand better the culture, see if there's a place to connect with the brand purpose, and then catch those things to open for, if it's interesting, of course, for the objective of the product or the service of the sales, if there is a place for you to make it positive, not only for the profit, but also for the culture, and in consequence for the people and the planet, if possible. And this is the thing that I love the most, that I'm looking to do. 6, 7 years ago, I had traumatism in the brain, a brain injury after a cranial traumatic injury. And I have survived, but I was just studying more. Before I was just
Great. I'm sorry to hear that.
but I'm alive. I'm happy for that. But I was just doing some donations up before that, and now after that, I'm focused on that. How can, in our profession, how in my profession, how can I build a better positive impact, not only on the profit, of course, for the clients, for the consumers, but also for the people and the planet, if possible. So this is the thing that I am looking the most, how to do that. And I'm very happy with that. You've mentioned that since 10 years ago, you're already having the awards on the social impact. And I'd love to do more on that if there is a space for that, as always, as being a judge again on that, and learn more about that. And as this is the key thing for me now, what do you recommend to me to make our category of advertisers in this planet to think more, and always, in every brief, the opportunity of creating a positive, not only brand impact, but on society and environmental, if it connects with the brand purpose?
Well, I think for me, it all, at a very high strategic level, it's all the same. So, I mean, I would use the Effie's 4 pillars. That's a business case. It makes you drill down. And I always say, marketing effectiveness is really two things. You're changing behavior for good, or you're changing behavior for profit. And you can do both of those. But I think the more insightful you can be, then, the better. I also think, despite the fact that there's an enormous amount of change driven by technology, it takes time for people to change their behaviors. And so ruthless consistency over a period of time, I know that for a fact, has much greater impact than if you are flipping in and out and changing things all the time. It's a marketeer's, I don't know, it has just something to do with that personality type. We always want to change things. But if you're on a good thing, just stick to your knitting, like stick to it and continue to do it day in, day out. I mean, marketing effectiveness is a day-to-day orientation. It's not something you do once a year. You do it every day. You create those behaviors every day. You produce work that's consistent, and is executed well, then, you will make a difference. You will change behavior over time. And I think it's this constant balance between short-term and long-term. Like, everyone wants everything instantaneously, but you need to be building towards something for the longer term as well. And I think that's really important, because I know everyone's under a lot of pressure to change everything. and deliver results like, in a nanosecond. And that is part of our jobs, but it should never be at the expense of the longer term.
It's fantastic to hear. Thanks a lot for that. Inspires me and gives them a lot of insights as well, for sure. Well, Traci, thank you so much for being part of this podcast
Thank you, Rafa. Thank you.
here. Thanks a lot.